uploading files from the browser directly to S3 without touching the server. And we're doing it securely. Is this even possible? I think so. And in today's video, we're going to see how. If you do find a security flaw, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Okay, so this is a bit of a weird video. On the one hand, I'm not great at AWS, and so this might or might not be the best solution. I don't know. On the other hand, I couldn't find much out there on doing secure direct uploads from the browser. So even with its flaws, this might be the best tutorial on this specific subject. Either way, I promise to show you every step of the site. So here we go. By the way, like most videos, I'm still happy to answer any questions you have about Vue, but I will not be answering any questions about S3 or the other AWS APIs. Here's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to start with getting a file from the input. And so we're going to use a basic HTML input of type file first. And then we're going to set up our stuff on S3. And then we'll be getting our S3 credentials securely so that only admins will ever have access to them. Then we're going to be uploading files with the AWS S3 library. Then we're going to put in a loading indicator, which is pretty important for large files like videos. And finally, we're going to switch out the basic HTML input for Vuetify's vFile input. It's just a couple lines of difference, but it does make the styling fit in much better to the rest of our app. And this is what's going to look like at the end. So let's get started. To start off with, we have a simple text field for our video and thumbnail URL. And while they certainly work, we've got the thumbnail and we've got the video, there is the issue where just one letter being wrong can make it not work at all. And so one single typo, it's gone. And you have to separately upload it to S3. So that's why we're doing this. Let's go ahead and go to our code and start putting in our very basic file input. And so it's an input tag, and you give it a type of file. That's the very basic part of it. And then we put on a change function. And so we're going to call a upload file function whenever the file is changed. And then let's go ahead and feed it some arguments. Let's make it for the thumbnail, since those are much faster to upload. And we'll feed it the field name, and then we'll be grabbing the event and the target off of the event, which is basically this input, and then .files from that. And that's an array of files, which is, unless you select multiple, just one file. All right, so let's create this upload file method. And we'll get our file from our files array. Then let's go ahead and put a debugger there so we can see what our file looks like. All right, we're going to upload an image, and let's see. So our file looks like this. It has a name and a size, a type, and it's not showing it in this data here, but it does have the actual image itself as well. Let's go back and we'll go ahead and in the video, we will set the thumbnail, or field name is going to be thumbnail, so we can do it like this and make it more generic and set it to file.name, just to see that this is going through. And all right, so that updated. Of course, that is not a valid URL, so there's not going to be a thumbnail shown here. But we can see sort of how the flow of information is going to go. That is, we're going to grab the file, then we're going to upload it to S3, and then we're going to get the URL for the file, and then we're going to assign that URL to the video. So written out like this, it does seem pretty simple, but it will get decently complicated, and we're going to want to do it at least twice. So let's go ahead and create a component, and we'll call it S3 file upload. And we'll start in putting just the input tag for now, and then we will copy over the methods. Copy over that entire hash. And then we will be importing this component and using it. Then let's go ahead and pass in the field name so it's a little bit more reusable. And that actually does not need to be a binding, but we do need to have a props here. Now let's see if this works like it did before. We will update the thumbnail and cannot set property thumbnail of undefined. So we don't have the video in there. That makes sense. Let's go ahead and pass it in, but let's make it more generic. It'll just be object. And then we'll use object there and add that to our props. And now let's see if it'll work. Good, it's updated the file name just like it had before. Of course, our goal is not to change this field to the file name. It's to upload it to S3 and then change this field to that URL. And to go farther in this, we're going to have to set some stuff up on S3. All right, so here's where I offer a huge disclaimer. I don't actually understand AWS or S3 perfectly. However, I can show you what I did to get stuff working. So after you create your bucket, we're calling ours View Screencast Uploads. Then go ahead and create the folders you want. You can create these programmatically, but I decided to just create them. And then go to permissions. And so we have our course configuration. So you have to put this in. Mine is a little bit loose. So here, basically anyone can get stuff from our bucket. And then, if it's coming from View Screencasts, you can put post and delete. And then, just to get stuff working on localhost, I let everything happen from everywhere. Not recommended, but it will get stuff working. I will probably tighten this up later, but this is just for cores. This is not where our security comes in. Our security comes from our bucket policy. Our bucket policy is a JSON hash, and the core of it comes in the statement array. And so our statement has two different objects in it. And so the one here, it allows anyone. So principal is who it affects, and this star is anyone. So it allows anyone to get our objects. in the resource view screencast upload with no conditions. And this other one, it allows this AWS IAM user in order to do the following actions: put, get, and delete on this bucket. You may be wondering, what is this principle? And that is a great question. Let me show you. So you can go up to this menu up here and go to My Security Credentials. And then you'll see that you can access users and policies, as well as roles, groups, and several other things. Once again, I don't understand all of this, but I did get it to work. So we have our users, and here is the one that we just created. And here is our ARN. The ARN is what we put into the bucket policy. And you can see we have attached to this user, we have a permissions policy. And this basically allows us to read, write, and tag on S3. We can see the entirety of it. Anyways, you set these policy permissions and you do it here. They have a lot that are pre-made. I don't know, I just made my own. But you have to connect it to your user and put this in your bucket policy. And you also have security credentials on the user. So notice that it's showing the access key ID, but it doesn't show the secret access key. And that's because once you create your access key, AWS will never show it to you again. You have to write it down. All right, so once you've created your user and attached a policy to it, and then got in the ARN and attached that to your bucket policy, then you should be ready to start using S3. The most naive way to include these credentials would be to put them anywhere in your Vue app. Why is that naive? Because that entire app is being sent down the wire, and so everyone who gets your app is going to get your credentials. However, we just want our admins to get our credentials. So how can we do that? Well, first let me say, if you do need your regular users to have access to S3, then look into AWS's identity pools or federated identities. I don't understand it completely, but I think that'll give you what you need. But if you just need admin access, then let's continue on with the video. So in our sessions controller, when we are sending back the current user, I've added in a parameter that basically says the admin is true if current user.admin. Then in our user serializer, we basically only include this hash with the access keys if that admin params is true. And you may be wondering, hey, we have access to the user. Why not just get user.admin? And the answer is that if you're in, say, the users controller and you get an index of all the users, and that includes an admin user, then if you did it like that, then that admin user would include your keys. Whereas if you just do it for in the params, then it will only do it when you specify those params, and that will only be with the current user. So only the admins will be getting these keys. Anyways, I'm going to switch these to some test values so that I can show you where they show up on the front end. So let's switch back to our browser and reload the page to get the new keys and open up our View Inspector. Go and get the state, and we'll see in the user, under S3 keys, we have our ID and our secret. And that is how we get our S3 keys securely to the browser. I find the official AWS SDK somewhat difficult to work with. Fortunately, there are other libraries available, such as AWS S3. So let's go ahead and start using that. We'll go to our terminal and we will add AWS S3. And then we can start configuring our app. So we'll have to import S3 from there, then set up configuration, then create a new S3 client, and then we can upload the file. So let's get started with that. We'll first copy in this code, and we'll put it in our S3 file upload component. All right. So this import S3 is going to be staying outside of our export default. Our config, I think, should go as a computed property. And that will just return this. And we'll be putting our own values in here, of course. And then we will create our S3 client, and we'll go ahead and have that as a computed property as well. All right, so this will be the basic structure of setting it up. And then in our upload file method, we will use their upload file method. So we'll go ahead and copy that in there for now. All right, now let's get this customized and working for our app. So we will start with the bucket name. For this project, it's View Screencasts Uploads. And it's going to be the same for every single type of file we're uploading. So we'll go ahead and hard code that in there. For the directory, that's going to be different for each one. And so we will go ahead and make that a variable, and we'll feed it in via the props. We'll go ahead and go back here and feed in our directory of thumbnails for this one. For the region, this is kind of nuts. I'm going to show you how to figure out what your region is. Why do I say it's nuts? Well, okay, so let's look at this URL here. It says US East 2 as my region, but here it says US West, Oregon. And if you put either of those in there, it will fail. The first one here, because it's incorrect, and this one because it's not the right format. But there's an easy way to find the right format. So go to a file, and you can go ahead and upload one manually just so you can get a file. And go here and open it up. And here, after S3, before Amazon, AWS.com, this is your actual region. So here it's US West 2. So let's go ahead and paste that in here. All right, now our access key ID, that we have on our user. So we'll get auth.user.s3keys.id. I believe that's correct. Let's go ahead and take a look and double check. Yes, s3_keys.id. And for our secret access key, it's the same, except secret instead of ID. If you want to make this look a little bit better, then you can go ahead and create an s3keys computed property that's just going to return this part of it. And then you'll just do this.s3keys.id and this.s3keys.secret. Finally, the S3 URL is the base URL for your bucket. It is not the URL of your file, it's not the URL of your directory, it's the URL of your bucket. So in our case, it would be all of this. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Actually, you know what? Let's do something even better. We will create a computed property called base URL, and we'll make it that. All right, so we have our configuration set up. Let's go ahead and look at our upload file method. So we've got our file just like before, and we put it in there, and that's good. Then we have this field new file name, which is optional, but I think a good idea. So let's go ahead and define the new file name. And let's actually go ahead and make this a computed property so that we can use it elsewhere if we need to. And yes, we will be using it elsewhere. Spoiler. Let's go ahead and return just something random for now. And go ahead and do a little bit of stuff on it so we don't get a decimal point in the middle. So it'll be 0. blah, blah, blah. And so this is a big old random file name. And we'll be modifying this a little bit later. All right, so we've got our new file name. We've got our file uploader. So let's go ahead and see how this is working so far. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting a debugger in both of these just so we can see what happens. And we'll also be logging the file name. And the reason we're going to be doing this is so we can check and see if it's been uploaded. All right, let's test this out. We'll hit choose file and we'll select file. And all right, so the file name, the old file name is in the URL just like it was before. We'll be fixing that behavior soon. Then we've got this file name here, so that was generated correctly. And then, so we are in the catch block, which means there was an error. And let's find out what this error was. Type error, failed to fetch. So this is an interesting error. I think it has something to do with the AWS S3 library, because if you look here, so 0712 are the first 4 digits of this. So if you refresh this page, then you'll see that it was actually uploaded. So it is a success, even though we are getting an error back. And I'll go ahead and show you. So you're not seeing the date and time right now, but this is right now. And yep, that is the image we uploaded. So what's up with that? Honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is that there's a way around it. And that way around it is to be able to construct the URL from the file name, directory, and base URL. So let's construct that URL. So we're going to return this dot base URL, and then this dot directory, and then this dot new file name. And this will be the URL mostly. Once we get the file, we'll be adding the file type to the end. So notice that here it's got .png on the end. That's constructed from something that is in this file right here. So we can't really access it here. And how we use this then is to completely ignore that for now. And for this URL we're putting in here, we will put in first the URL and then a dot and the file type. And let's construct the file extension. And so we'll get that off of file.type, which will be something like image/png. And so what we're going to do is we're going to split it on that. And then we will grab the second element. And this should give us the correct URL and put it in the correct place. And so let's go ahead and try it. And what that means is the new image should show up here. And we did not get it working. And that's because of a common error. So here, notice something interesting about the URL? Yeah, there's 2 slash marks there. So we can go ahead and get rid of one of the slash marks on the base URL. Oh, and there's one more issue. And that issue is that, so when we assign this, we'll go here and this image will try to download our new file before it's ready, because uploading the file takes a little while. So what we need to do is we need to wait until our promise is returned. It's going to return as a failure, but that's fine. We have a finally, so it'll catch both successes and failures. And then we assign it. Now let's go test this out. All right, it's showing up. Excellent. Now, this will not automatically save. We could make it do that, but we've decided not to. I don't know if that's the right choice, but you can make your decision. And if we want this to save, we can hit Save Video here, and now it will show up everywhere, even when we reload the page. So now what we'll do is we'll delete the old version, and we'll go ahead and put this for videos as well. And the field name here will be video URL, and the directory will be videos. We are losing this requirement rule, but I think that's okay. First of all, because it'll be pretty easy to see whether something is there or not now that we have these new video displays. And second of all, because this is just admins, so we don't need to be quite as strict. And sometimes I may want to pre-do some of this stuff before I actually have a video and thumbnail ready. All right, so we have 2 file uploads. There is an issue that first, we would prefer them to be on 2 different lines, and second, we don't know which is which. So let's go ahead and add some labels. We'll add label to the props, and then we'll go ahead and put in, we'll have to wrap this with a div, since there can be only one top level. And then we'll go ahead and put in the text of the label. And that solves both of our problems at once. We'll go to where we use the component and put in the actual labels. And so we'll call this one video file, and this one thumbnail image. And now they are kind of working. So you can make your styling much better. And in the last section of this video, we are going to do that. We're going to use Vuetify, but if you have your own custom styling system, then you can make that happen. But styling aside, we now have a complete system. There is, however, one issue. So let's say that we are uploading a video. Seems something reasonable to do. And we upload something that is 347 megabytes. It sure looks like it's okay here, but in our network, we're going to see that it is pending, and it's going to be pending for quite a while. And so we need to let the user know. To do that, we're going to have a loading indicator. And it's going to be fairly basic. So here we're just going to set this dot is loading to true. And once it's uploaded, set this dot is loading to false. And we can define is loading in data, and that will return by default as false. Now we'll go ahead and have an if statement here. And so if is loading, then we'll just have a simple uploading your file, please wait. And then we'll close out that div and have another div with a velse. We'll go ahead and do an image first. We'll see that it briefly had the loading, and then it has the image here. And here, we can have a larger file, and we won't stick around for it to finish, but we can see that it is indeed uploading. And once it finishes, for the image, we'll see it here on the right side automatically. And for our file, it will have our video, and we can see whether it's the correct one. In this case, it's the old one because this file is not yet finished uploading. If this was a client-facing app, then there would be a lot that I would do to improve this. So I would try to get the current progress of the upload and make some sort of progress bar. And I would try to have the file name here after it was uploaded. But this is just for use by the admin, and I know my workarounds. And so that's probably something I'll tackle later. But for now, there's a lot of work to do, and so this is good enough for now. But with that said, I will be adding one piece of styling, and that is using Vuetify. We have a working file upload component. The issue is, it is not pretty at all, and it doesn't show a whole lot of the information we need. Now, we're not going to make it perfect. There's a lot that we could do, but there is one easy step we can take to make it a lot easier to use, and it won't take long at all, and that's using Vuetify's vFile input. Let's go ahead and make this work. So we've got our vFile input, and that means we won't need type equals file anymore. Then we'll still have the change event, but the way we're calling it is a little bit different. All right, so we're going to upload a thumbnail image. And cannot read property files of undefined. Well, our event does not have a target because there's not actually an event here. So that's one big difference. We can't get our files from the event. So how do we figure out where exactly the file is? Well, we're going to use vModel, and we're going to have to define an upload object. So we can define the default here. We'll create an upload object, and by default, it will just have, so spoilers, the name is what's shown. It's not going to show up here yet, but it's what's shown here. And so we can go ahead and get the URL showing up there. That'll be useful. And so we'll get the object that's passed in and get the field name that's passed in. And that should get us the URL. All right, so it's showing part of the URL. It is cutting it off a lot. So let's try to expand that. We'll do that by adding a new argument here, truncate length, and we'll do it at 125. And there we go. Now we can see the entire file name. All right, so we've got our upload object, which we will be able to access here. And so how will that help us? Well, we can just have the file as this.upload object, and we won't be having files as an argument. And as a matter of fact, we don't need field name as an argument. We can just do this.fieldName. So upload file can be turned into just this. We can also go ahead and put the label directly on the vFile input. And that means we won't need it up here. This is in the material design style, so it fits in with the rest of the page. So it's looking pretty good. Let's see if it works. No, it does not. Cannot read property split of undefined. So it looks like file.type is undefined. Let's go ahead and take a look at our new file. It may be a little bit different than the old file that we were working with. All right, so we've got our file. And it's actually the method that we're in. We need this.upload object, which is what we want, and does have a type. All right, so be careful of trusting autocomplete blindly. And let's try this again. We will upload this. Okay, and it looks like this one worked. Can tell because it's got this new name. Let's see what happens to that when we save. So we save, it's showing up. And let's go back to the edit screen. And we'll find that that cool name is not there, but we do have a different number here. And that means that we did actually upload something new. Okay, but speaking of that name, 572353 blah 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 is a terrible name. Let's do better. So our new file name, let's change this a little bit. We'll still start off with the random math. And we'll go ahead and limit the number of these. And then we will add the actual file name. So we'll get this.uploadObject.name. All right, now let's try that out. So we will put this in, and we'll hit save, and we will go back. And here we go. We have 783, and that's our randomized number, so that if we upload it twice in a row, then it will not overwrite it. And then we have the name. And let's go ahead and add a couple more digits on here for better randomization, but it's basically good. If we had a better name rather than when I took this screenshot, it'd be even better. There's a downside. It adds the file extension twice, but that is something that happens when we're putting it on S3. And I think that's part of the AWS S3 library. So can't really help that. But users will not be seeing these, just admins, so it's fine. And now we are done with this feature for the moment. There are some more things that we could do. So we could, delete a file. We could have a progress bar. But this is an admin-facing thing, and so the feature set doesn't need to be quite as rich as if it was user-facing. With that said, this is a whole lot better than what we had before, and from a practical standpoint, this is going to save me a lot of time when I'm uploading videos. Let's review what we did. So first, we made our S3 file upload component. And we inserted that into our video edit form. At first, in addition to the previous fields. And for that, we used a regular input HTML tag of type file. And when the file changed, we called upload file with a field name that we fed in, and the list of files from the $event.target. Then we grabbed the file, and as a demonstration, we put the name of the file onto the video. That is, onto the field that we passed in. Then after that, so this was just a demonstration to see how the file is going to start to interact. Then we went and did a lot of stuff on S3 that I will not repeat here. And you can go back to that and follow along if you need it. Then, once everything was set up with S3, and we had our keys working correctly, then we started using AWS S3 in order to actually push it up to S3. So we installed it with Yarn, and we gave our component one more piece of data, one more prop, and then the rest of it happened in here. So importing it, S3 from AWS S3, and making a new client from that from our config. And our config is this. So we have our bucket name, our directory name, which is passed in, our region name, I told you how to find that, our two S3 keys, which are on our user, and then our base URL, which you can find by going to your bucket in the S3 console. The other computed properties that we added are new file name, which creates a random string of digits, and then a URL, which combines our base URL, directory, and new file name. And we'll see how we use all these together here. So our isLoading got put in a commit too early. That's okay. Let's look at the other stuff. So we have this.s3 client grabbed from up here and with all our config stuff, and we call upload file. And it brings in our file, which we got from our template, and then this .new file name, which we calculate here. And then, after that's all returned, we take our file and get our type, and we add that to the URL, and then put that in the video object. So at this point, stuff should be working, but it doesn't look great. And so this commit is a lot of quality of life improvements. So first of all, we replace both of the text fields with S3 file upload, so they're actually being used as they're supposed to. And as you can see, we've added a label to these as well. Then we have our is loading. So if it's is loading, then it shows a message. And so the user knows not to hit the save button because then that'll interrupt it. I'm sure there are ways to do uninterrupted uploading, and maybe in the future I'll do that, but this works for now. All right, and then otherwise it shows the Vuetify file input. And we have our view model, which has our upload object, which is by default just this name, because the name is what it shows as the placeholder. And then we've got our label, and we make it longer than it normally would. Then down here we have updated the new file name, so that includes the actual name of the file we're uploading. And then we adjust upload file to use upload object. We do this because that's how we're getting the data with Vuetify. We're no longer passing in the files array. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking through it. I am personally glad that this one is done and that I won't have to mess with S3 for a little while. And it also means I'm ready to start uploading videos to the site. So for the next couple weeks, I'm going to be focusing on that and doing some new videos as well, but not at quite the crazy pace that they've been at. But there is a lot of exciting stuff coming, especially once we're able to launch the site. So keep your eyes peeled, and as always, if you liked this, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe, and maybe tell a friend. All right, I'll see you next time.